All right, so for the first scramble, you had a pretty good cross solution, but you neglected to look for first pair during your cross, and I think it would have been pretty easy. So your first pair was the red and blue one, so these two pieces, and they both only move like once, so it actually wasn't so hard. So how you did the cross was R to line up all these pieces, and then D and insert all of them like that, then D2. So finger tricks were good. Then you didn't look ahead to these two, so there was a slight pause, and then you did this. Now, this one and this one was your next pair, but I think you did U prime and then another U prime to get this, then sledgehammer to pair them up, which is an okay way to pair them up, but then you'd have to rotate to insert. So how I would do this is, since it was already here, you could do that, just take it out and then have this pair to work with, which is a pretty good case. Or the way I do it from this angle is like that, and then solve this case. But anyway, you did sledgehammer and then had to rotate. Then you definitely looked to the back here to see what this corner was. And I understand that it's hard to see like when you're inserting this into there. You could have seen that it's orange here, but I mean, you may not have, and that's okay. But at this point, what you should do is do a U prime first, just to check, rather than do this, which is just a bad habit. So do that and then insert like that. So at this point, you definitely had a pause, and all you really had to track was this edge piece if you had looked down to see white over here. So that just tells me that you're kind of lacking in your look ahead. I mean, if the white was facing you and your thumb was blocking it, then that's a little bit different, but I think when it's on the side, it's pretty easy to see, or you were not looking at the right spot. So make sure that you're looking at the open slot, and then this one should be easy to track. So first thing I would have done is put it here, and then what you did, instead of rotating and doing the standard way, is to do it like this, which saves the rotation. Now, I'm not going to say that's better or worse. It might be better. So I'll just give you a green check mark for that. Then you did OLL, no problem, and then PLL. This is just like a slight nitpick, but I think you started it like this. And I prefer to start it with my thumb on top, just so there's no rotation, there's no regrip all the way through. But that's not really a big deal. All right, so for your second solve, your cross, you made a mistake somewhere in it. It wasn't like a big mistake, but it was still probably why this was the slowest solve out of your average, because the rest of it was pretty normal compared to the rest of your average. So what you did first was line up blue like that, then line up orange to go opposite of red, then line up green to be solved relative to these two. Then you solved orange, green, align the cross, and next all you have is L prime. But instead of doing L prime, you did B, I don't know why, and then B prime, and then L prime, which did cost you some time because you rotated up and rotated back down a few times. Then I thought this one was easy to look ahead to, but so is this one, so you did this one first. And you definitely had a pause here again, so make sure that you're doing cross to F dual transition a little bit more smoothly. Now here, if you're looking ahead, you would see this one and realize that, I don't know if you can realize it right away, but at this point you might be able to see that, hey, they're paired together, and insert it into the back before continuing on with this. But I'm not going to dock you points for that one because that's a little bit hard to see. So you went into this one first. But at this point, you should have seen this pair because that's probably the easiest one at this point to see. It was moving around your vision the entire time. So you could go straight into it like that. But instead, you did a Y prime and then saw this and then did another Y prime, which I would just say is very bad look ahead here. Then you did these. And here the look ahead again was really not up to par because this one is right here. And see how it never moves relative to each other? So you should have been watching it the whole time. And instead you had a pause here, then did these. Then you had another pause and did these two. Then OLL. And then PLL, you use a non-standard Y perm, which is like this. Now, I like this algorithm, but the way you did it is, I think it's better to do the standard one. And the reason is because the standard one doesn't really have a regrip that takes up your time. But the way you did it, you have to do it like this and then regrip and then continue. So I'm just going to show you like how I do it. Normally I do the first F move like this, which makes the entire algorithm regripless. So since I'm lefty, I would do it like that. Okay, so your third solve was one of the luckiest solves I've ever seen. That wasn't like a last layer skip or something. So here's your cross pieces, and you can see red and green go in really easily. You have a pair here you can preserve, and then orange goes in that relatively solved to these two. So you did D2, insert orange, insert red, and good that you preserved this pair by doing U, but before inserting green, then align the cross. So at this point, you did U2, rotate. Now the thing is, this one has blue on it, just remember that. Then you inserted this. So first thing I would have seen was rotating, since you don't really see much. First thing I saw is this, and I actually know where the edge is. It's right here. And that's because this is yellow, this is yellow, this is yellow. So I can like see all of these, and as soon as I rotate away, I'm looking completely on this side. So, and this one has blue on it, so therefore it must not go with this one. And this is really important because I would have gone straight into this pair. This takes a lot of experience to be able to do deduction very fast, but instead of doing deduction and looking around, at this point you could have just do a U prime and check that it's not this one. Instead you did this a few times and then you saw it. So there was quite a big pause over here that could have saved the solve, like not save it, but make it even better. So you did this one, and I don't know if you could have seen it like this, but once you rotate, you should definitely see this. And you did see it pretty quickly, but you definitely had a slight pause yet, even though you had seen it. So did that, and you should already be like fighting to do the L prime as fast as possible. Anyway, you insert it like that, then got an OLL skip. Then here, Lucas Etter showed this cool U-perm that I think is nice because you regripped all the way to here, which is how I used to do the U-perm, but then there's one like this. R3 here, and then that. I think I like it better, but it's up to you. All right, for the fourth solve, you started your cross by lining up orange, and here are all the other cross pieces. So you lined up orange and then inserted blue and orange at the same time. So what you'll notice here is that once you insert blue, red, green, and orange are all lined up. So that just means you have to align blue and then do the rest of them one by one. But instead you did the rest of them one by one and then had to redo blue. So your cross solution could have been a little bit better. Now here, I can tell you weren't looking ahead to your first pair because here's the corner that goes with the edge right here and you completely missed it. So you had to look to the back here, which caused you a very big pause right at the beginning of the solve. Then you went into these two. And here there was another pause. Now I can understand here because it's harder to look ahead. I mean, the edge was over here and the corner's over here and everything's kind of slotted. So that makes sense, but then you shouldn't have to look to the back because technically if you just look at the front and you decide I want the edge that goes with this one, you can deduce very quickly just by looking at each of the stickers here that it must not be the one that goes with this one. So it has to be that one. And then since it doesn't match green, it's misoriented, and then the way you paired it was pretty good. Then you did this one, and both rotations here, you made sure that there were open front slots or open right slots, so that was very good. Then here, I think this is very easy to look ahead to. It's just a white sticker and this one's solved. So if you had better look ahead here, you could have gone straight into this next one. And then a slight nitpick also I have here is that you did it like this, starting with your thumb on the bottom, which required a regrip. So what I recommend is try to be able to do all your F2L cases without regrips, such as like this, which is just a very slight optimization. Now for OLL, your finger trick was very interesting and had a lot of regrips. So if you're going to do the algorithm you used, I suggest you do it like this. But, and then you have a J-perm afterwards, so I'm not going to talk about the solve anymore. But then the algorithm I recommend for that case, which I like better, but you might not, is like this. So I'm just going to do it very quickly again. You hold the bars horizontally, and then you just have to memorize the first few moves, which is like this. And then from here, you just solve this F2L case. Okay, now for the last solve, the cross was pretty straightforward, and I probably would have done it the same way you did. So you inserted blue like this, and then you have red and green set up, and then green takes out orange. So you did it like this, just move blue over, green and red, then you did orange from the back like this. Instead of inserting blue with F here, which makes for F2 and B2, I probably would have inserted blue with L and then do it like this, which is a slightly better finger trick. Okay, so then first pair is this one and this one, like that. And then you did these two, which personally I think should have been not very hard to track because they were right there. There was a slight pause and then you came over here and did it like this. This one should have been easy to track, so the pause was a little bit smaller. And then here you did a rotation and then a rotation back. If you do anything like recognition of edge orientation during F2L, then you would know you wouldn't have to rotate for this case. But then the other thing is just that your recognition needs to be a little bit better and don't rotate preemptively before you actually recognize the case. So there's not much to talk about this solve. It was pretty much just that one rotation that wasn't very good. And then you have OLL. I don't know if you know this G-perm from this angle. I feel like you must know it, unless the only algae uses this R2F2 one, because I think you had a little bit of trouble recognizing it, and then you did a U prime, and then the G-perm, rather than just doing the G-perm from this angle. And yeah, it is hard to recognize the G-perm from that angle, but I mean, if you can't recognize it, then you're really only using one of the algorithms, and I think both of the algorithms are really good, so you should know them both and maybe learn like two-side PLL recognition or just learn the pattern for that specific case. So for this G-perm, how you recognize it is, okay, from this side it's like kind of impossible. I'm not going to try to teach that to you right now, but then from this side it's just a checker pattern of 4 stickers in a row. If it was 5 stickers it would be R perm, but then 4 stickers is the G perm with the block here. So just try to remember that, I guess. Okay, I'm going to very briefly go over your strengths and weaknesses because I think they're pretty straightforward. The obvious strength that you have is your turn speed is very good, your finger tricks are very good, and overall, like, I can't really say much about that. However, your number one weakness was definitely because of your number one strength. You were turning very fast, so your look ahead was not up to par. So there are 2 things I want to say about look ahead. The first one is to make sure you turn slow enough that you can actually put effort into look ahead and have it be rewarded to you by being able to not pause between pairs. Now that might be hard to do at first. I'm going to talk a bit more about that later. Now the second thing is you have to make sure you're not looking at the back like this, because you may not realize it because you're currently doing an action as you do it, but it actually takes up a lot of time. Like if you weren't doing this and you were just pausing instead, you would realize how much time that actually takes up. Now, ideally, you would just know where the pieces are, but of course that's pretty hard to do. So less than ideal, but better than turning to look at the back is to just do U-turns instead if they're in the U layer. Some other things I mentioned in the video were deduction, where if you know what this piece is and you're looking all at this side, sometimes just by looking at all these stickers, you can just kind of tell what that one is. So the thing about practicing look ahead, and this includes cross to F2L transition, when you practice, do untimed solves. You don't necessarily have to go super slow, but try to do untimed solves so that you can actually think about what you're doing, because when you worry about your times, you may get frantic with your turn speed. So let me just go through like a short example here of how you should practice, and I want everyone to kind of take from this. If you have pauses in your solves at all, you should try to practice like this. So here I'm just like doing my cross, so I'm trying to preserve this pair. Then go straight into this one here, looking ahead to this. It's not anywhere here. I never looked over here, but it must be this one over right over here. And then tracking red and green and inserting red and green and then going straight into red and blue. You need to go slow enough so that you never pause. It could be like 1 or 2 turns per second or something. And then if you don't pause, then you can upgrade yourself to a faster turn speed, but that's basically how you should be practicing. So the thing is, now once you start practicing this, you have to make sure that these skills translate into your solves. That means that you have to turn a little bit slower during your solves, not necessarily like 1 or 2 turns per second, because there's really no point in timing that. You still want decent solves, but you don't want to worry about the times. You want to finish a solve and think about how good was my look ahead that solve. Because if you keep worrying about your times, then with the current way that you're practicing, where you just turn as fast as you can and the look ahead is a bit lacking, then you can, within reason, make your times better by about 1 second. So in order to make your look ahead more useful, you have to make sure that you think about that rather than thinking about your times or your turn speed or anything else. So the thing is, you may get worse at first. If you average, say, 11 seconds, you may start doing 12 or 13 seconds. But don't think about that. Don't think about the times you're getting. Think about how good you feel about your look ahead, and then eventually you will catch up. Now you can think about it like this. You are approaching the top of a hill of how good you can get with your current practice techniques without enough look ahead. Now, somewhere else there's a mountain you could be climbing instead of that little hill. That is what you could achieve if you practice your look ahead more. However, in order to go up the mountain, you must first go down the hill. Your times will get worse at first, but then if you keep at it, you will get better in the end and you will have a lot more potential with your new practice techniques. When you're practicing turning without pausing, inevitably you'll have to pause sometimes. But when you do have to pause, ask yourself, why did you have to pause? And your next step is to make sure it doesn't happen again.